Coming up, would the SEC fear Chip Kelly at Florida? And should Auburn fear missing the playoff if it wins out? We'll try to decide next on AT&T SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AT&T's SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Mike Johnson. He is the former Alabama All-American. For the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk some SEC with you and a lot to get into. Not great games on the field this week. A lot of what we'll do today will be playoff implications of the next 2 weeks and a lot of coaching rumors as well, because at a couple big spots in the SEC, these things are really starting to heat up.
I feel like we've been talking about coaching rumors for like 8 months now on this show, and they're all starting to really kind of fall in place. We've been talking about Dan Mullen maybe and Chip Kelly and Les Miles and Butch Jones, and it just keeps on rolling.
Oh, yeah. Coming up 40 minutes from right now, we'll talk to Josh Ward, who covers the Tennessee Vols on the Tennessee podcast every day at SECCountry.com. We'll talk some Tennessee with him about 40 minutes from right now. But let's start things off by reminding you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless. DirecTV, they'll help you stay connected all season long. And how could you not want to stay connected right now with so much going on, including item number 1 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list here. Rumors starting to heat up about the possibility of Chip Kelly at Florida. This may have seemed like a bit of a long shot for a while, but all of a sudden now there's some real energy starting to get around this, even if Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland is doing his part to kind of shoot down on some of this. Let me show you an example on social media of one person kind of generating a rumor here about what Chip Kelly might do. It's at Breakout Analyst on Twitter, screen grabbing a Rivals account on Alligator Alley about that it's a done deal, Chip Kelly at Florida. It won't be announced until it's signed, but it's apparently a done deal according to this insider reporting on a Florida message board. Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland apparently saw that, though, had the response that there's a lot of bad, i.e. incorrect info out there, but this is a whole other level of bad information. So, Mike, it's kind of funny. Strickland's doing his part to kind of push back on some of this kind of stuff, but that screen grab we just showed you is not the only example of this on the internet. You can kind of go all over the place and find people who think they know and think that Chip Kelly's coming to Florida. So, I mean, how serious do you take this at the moment?
I take it very serious. I mean, you know, B.A., where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it's funny the way that he did kind of respond to that. I mean, are you talking about the weird rumor that Jeremy Foley's involved and that Charlie Strong's involved, or are you talking about the rumor about Chip Kelly? Because I think he's kind of beating around the bush there, maybe trying to stomp out some of these fires. And you know, people have been talking about it all over social media. Darren Heitner's another guy that Andrew Astford was posting today on SEC Country. According to one source spoken to, there's been at least some sort of verbal commitment that there won't be an issue hiring Chip Kelly. That was posted on SEC Country today, and I believe it. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of these coaching rumors tend to come out of nowhere. Sometimes they can be stomped out. Last year, we heard all about Tom Herman to LSU. We heard a bunch about Jimbo Fisher to FSU. But I think this is, the more and more we move in this direction, I really do think this is a slam dunk hire for Florida right now. I think that if you get Chip Kelly, if you are tonight, tomorrow, anytime this week, announce Chip Kelly as the head coach, he's a guy that these recruits know. He can go ahead and head on the recruiting trail. He can start to get things lined up by December 20th. There's a ton of speed and talent already on this team. It's a team that's been known for good defense for the last few years, for the last 20 years, really, under Urban Meyer and the other coaches they've had. I think it would be a great hire if they can announce tonight that Chip Kelly's the head coach.
So here's the thing I got to ask, though, because it was just really about a week or so ago here on AT&T SEC Country Live. We read a lot of comments from Florida fans at the time that did not want Chip Kelly. I mean, it seems like, if you don't mind me saying, it seems like your opinion on Kelly's evolved a little bit.
It has.
I'd love to hear from some Florida fans on this. Is your opinion of Kelly also evolving here? Because, I mean, really, it wasn't that long ago. And I'm not going to try to tell Florida fans who they should want. I mean, I got my opinion on this, but I'm not going to try to tell Florida fans who they should want, at least in this regard. I'm honestly curious if Florida fans have kind of evolved on Kelly. All of a sudden, they like him a little bit more, too, because clearly you seem to.
Yeah, I definitely evolved, and here's why. And let me try to explain this as best as I can. I look at Chip Kelly, and I'm not sure that he is a national championship caliber head coach. That was kind of my gripe with him. Can he win a national title? I didn't really see it at Oregon. He got to the game. They didn't play that well. His offensive system didn't run well against the SEC team that he played in 2010 in Auburn. But I think when you take a step back and look at it, this league has changed so much. I mean, football has changed so much. The defenses have changed so much. Chip Kelly might not win a national title at Florida, but I think he can install an offensive system that makes Florida work a lot better than they have since Urban Meyer left.
And it's that offensive system that's got some people excited down there in Gainesville right now. I'll give you an example of that. Jeff Cardozo, one of the guys that does our Florida podcast every day at SECCountry.com. He's a Gators insider. This is a guy that's pretty connected to the program, close to a lot of people down there. And on the Florida podcast this week, week. Here's what he said about what he thinks the reaction would be, not just in Gainesville, but around the rest of the SEC if Kelly goes to Florida. And I have to admit, he makes kind of an interesting point. Here's Jeff Cardozo.
Pretend it's now Tennessee next year. We're going into Knoxville, and the Tennessee fans are rowdy. They're excited about their new coach, and now all of a sudden the Gators are walking out of the tunnel, and it's Mike Norvell leading the Gators out. That's not a sexy name. That's not something the Tennessee fans are scared of. Or let's pretend it's Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell walking out of the tunnel to lead the Florida Gators. You think Tennessee's fans are, like, freaking out? No. But now, Chip Kelly leading the Gators. They're seeing this guy in orange and blue and a little visor. And if you're a Tennessee fan, holy bleep. Chip Kelly is leading the Gators out of this tunnel. Like, to me, that's the drop the mic. That's the name. Boom. There it is. That's the name that freaks out people, not only in the league, but the entire country.
There's no denying that that's true, that he's a much bigger name than anybody that Florida could hire. So, I mean, obviously he would have bigger reverberations than almost anybody else the Gators could hire. But there's a way to interpret what Cardozo says there, though, that's more about winning the press conference than actually winning games on the field. Because a lot of times the hire that's actually going to be the most successful is not the one that sort of feels the best at the onset. Is Florida, assuming that Cardozo kind of speaks for Florida here, is Florida interested in the wrong thing?
I don't think so. And that's kind of another reason that my opinion has kind of turned on Chip Kelly as the days have gone by. The more people I've talked to, the more opinions you get on Chip Kelly. Because I think we can sit here and look at every other angle other than X's and O's. And I think they've tried to do that in the past. I think they've looked at Jim McElwain as kind of a coach that, riverboat gambler type style at Colorado State, and a guy that can, has the resume behind him. Chip Kelly, the one thing you can't debate is X's and O's, that he's an offensive guru.
Yeah.
We can talk about what he'll be on the recruiting trail. We can talk about, kind of the face of this program. Is he too stern? Does he want to go out and recruit? Does he want to jump ship after a year or two and go back to the NFL? But one thing you can't deny is that guy can draw up an offense and run an offense, and that's what Florida fans are clamoring for. Add that to the fact that he's a guy that doesn't have a job right now, and you can go ahead and install him as the head coach right now. I just think I think it's a good marriage at this point in time.
I want to read two comments, and then I want to make a quick final comment of my own. Greg Steele, who's a great Florida fan in our comment section, says the thing that concerns him about Kelly is he lacks personality. I think that McElwain was lacking in personality a little bit, and I think it's dangerous to make another hire who lacks personality when the last coach probably didn't have the greatest personality fit for the University of Florida.
I don't see it that way. I understand the whole thing about personality. I think that at some point your head coach needs to have some personality. But show me where Kirby Smart has been. I love Kirby and I love Jim McElwain. I don't think Kirby Smart's gone over the edge and had a ton of personality. I don't think Nick Saban has a ton of personality. I think they're very businesslike. I think their demeanor is get to the point, let's play football. I don't want to have to deal with press conferences. I don't want to deal with answering questions. I want to do the X's and O's. Sometimes that's what makes a good football coach. I think that Butch Jones a lot of times had a good personality. I think Les Miles had a good personality. Mark Richt didn't always end up being great coaches, and so I think you have to kind of see through that sometimes.
Dedrick Frazier, who's a Georgia fan, says that he's not worried about Chip Kelly because he doesn't think Kelly can recruit the South, and I agree with Dedrick on this. Speaking as a person who obviously has a lot of affection for Georgia, Chip Kelly at Florida doesn't scare me one iota, because to go back to what Jeff Cardozo said, that guy leading you out of the tunnel, Chip Kelly leading you out of the tunnel, coaches don't intimidate me. I'm not personally intimidated by Nick Saban. Nick Saban's players intimidate me. It's the roster that you build that makes a team scary. It's not the coach and his offensive genius and what he draws up that makes the opponent scared. It's the amount of good players he brings in. And I don't trust Chip Kelly to fill a roster in the South with good players, given his sort of geographic ties to other parts of the country.
That is fair. That is fair when you look at it. And listen, he said a few years ago that he liked being in the NFL. He didn't have to recruit. He didn't want to get on the recruiting trail again. Here's what I'd be nervous though if I were Georgia, Tennessee, some of these other teams in the SEC East. If I'm Justin Fields or if I'm like Emory Jones or one of these other dual threat quarterbacks, I'm taking a long, hard look at what Chip Kelly's doing at Florida. I understand that Justin Fields is a Georgia guy. Everybody wants him at Georgia. He loves Georgia. But I'm just telling you right now, when you look at the two offensive systems and you put them side by side, if I'm a dual threat quarterback, I'm taking a long, long look at what's going on at Florida. They have a ton of speed, and he has the ability to get it done. He recruited at Oregon because of Nike. But I think that he can coach players up to play at a higher level. I don't know that he needs the right off the bat, top 5 recruiting classes to be successful in year one.
Interesting to see, though, if he could hold on to the current 2018 Florida committed quarterback Matt Corral, if Kelly is indeed the guy that gets the job. Let's move on to item number 2 on our AT&T SEC Country Life First and 10 list. College football playoff rankings do come out tonight. The expectation that Auburn's going to be moving up here two-loss team. It's a team still very much alive, potentially for the college football playoff. In fact, Paul Feinbaum, citing some numbers from the analytics site 538, says that Auburn has an overwhelming chance of making the playoff if it wins out. Here's what 538 reports. Best chance to reach the playoff if they win the remaining games. Auburn at 91%, Ohio State at just 62%. Anybody else than that, well, the odds are really no better than a third or 25% of getting into the college football playoff. I don't put a lot of stock in this, given the fact that this is a math equation trying to answer something that's essentially sort of a human decision. Yeah. I mean, the playoffs are determined by a group of people in a room. I don't know that math can predict what human beings are going to do. But do you agree with the results, though, that Auburn, if it wins out, has a 9 in 10 chance of making the college football playoff?
The only disagreement I have with it is that I think it should be 99%. I mean, I look at what is in the top 10 right now, and I don't see how if Auburn wins out and wins an SEC title that they get left out. Because, you're going to look at Miami and Clemson at 2 and 4 right now in the AP. Obviously, those rankings coming out later tonight, but they're going to have to play each other. Those are two teams that are going to match up. Maybe there's a chance Miami sneaks in with a loss to Clemson, and they both, two teams from the ACC. Oklahoma still has to beat Oklahoma State, possibly in the Big 12 championship. You'd already cut Alabama out of there. You'd already cut Georgia out of there, and you leave Wisconsin and Ohio State. Are you telling me that it's going to be Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Clemson, Miami, and that's the only other scenario? I just don't see it playing out that way. If Auburn wins out, to me, it's as slam dunk as anything has been that they're going to make the college football playoff.
A slightly different opinion, though, comes from ESPNU Radio. One of the hosts, Taylor Zarzar, I heard this today, and I wanted to kind of play this. It's just a rebuttal to what apparently 538 is saying about Auburn's overwhelming chance of getting in. Apparently, at least some folks don't even think they'd be the most likely two-loss team to make the playoff. Here's how Taylor Zarzar said this on ESPNU Radio earlier in the week.
Williams-Brice is lit a week from Saturday night. Debo comes out on the field. He doesn't play, but he comes out on the field to fire up everybody before and Sandstorm is rocking and the Gamecocks are going crazy and they knock off Clemson, and Clemson turns around and beats the Miami Hurricanes and has the head-to-head over the SEC champion Auburn Tigers. You know what? I think Clemson would still get in that scenario.
So too.
So what he's describing there is if South Carolina were to win its in-state rivalry game in the season against Clemson, Clemson then would be a two-loss team that goes on to win the ACC. He's saying that Clemson would get in over two-loss Auburn. I'm assuming the reason is because Clemson won head-to-head. So that's at least an example of a team, even with two losses, that might make it over Auburn, at least according to that one ESPNU host, which kind of goes back to what you and I talked about before the season even began. And you all know, I mean, I don't make any bones about this. I'm the biggest SEC homer in the world. There's nobody that sort of wants to tout the case of the SEC more than I do. But this notion that in this sort of modern age that we're in, there's a lot of SEC fatigue, and frankly, not every SEC team has sort of lived up to its bargain in terms of promoting the premier conference of the sport. I still don't know that it's a guarantee that one of those 4 spots in the playoff is definitely going to belong to the SEC champion. I would assume that Auburn probably does get in as a two-loss team, work to win the league, but boy, I can't guarantee that right now.
I feel comfortable and almost guarantee it if they win out. Because, and here's the thing, I think that if Clemson loses South Carolina and they beat Miami, I think Miami's out. I think we can already count out Notre Dame. The only other possibility is you're going to look at 2 teams maybe from the Big Ten if Ohio State is a 2-loss team and beats Wisconsin. I think obviously you're going to count Alabama out at that point, which you probably can't. You probably can't count Alabama with 1 loss to Auburn, a top 5 team on the road to end the season. But you probably can, and Auburn obviously would get the nod over Alabama in that scenario. I just think it's tough right now to count out Auburn if they win out. There's so many different scenarios at play. But I think you have to bury Wisconsin if they lose to Ohio State. I think you have to bury Miami if they lose to Clemson. And I think Notre Dame's out of it. And so the only scenario left to me is that an SEC champion fills that gap, especially if they end the season with 3 top 10 wins.
A lot of comments coming in on this. Let me get a few of these. Jonathan Welch says, Auburn fans are already putting a W in the win column for the Iron Bowl. In 2015, Bama gave up 400 yards to MSU. In 2015, Bama got number 16. So he's saying, don't read too much about the Mississippi State game. Yeah. James Crump says Auburn should be number 6 behind Georgia at number 5. Alan Frazier says if Auburn wins out, they should get in, but they won't because even if they beat Alabama, it's going to be really hard to beat a team twice, and that's what they would have to do in the SEC championship game against Georgia. Jeff Crenshaw says Auburn's not going to beat Alabama. Jacob Emmanuel Thrash says Auburn would have beaten number 1 twice. That means that he thinks they deserve to get in.
That's where it's at. That to me is the biggest trump card that you can play. If you've beat the number 1 team in America twice, and you, by the way, you played the number 1 team in America 3 times in the year, only lost 1 of them. You went 2 and 3 versus the number 1s. And they come in as a SEC championship game, but then I don't see how you keep Auburn out.
You got an opinion on this? The guy that says he thinks that Georgia should still be ranked ahead of Auburn. Auburn gets the head-to-head win in convincing fashion. Georgia's got fewer losses. Who are you putting on top tonight? You putting Auburn ahead of Georgia or Georgia ahead of Auburn?
If the game had been closer, I think that we could probably get away with putting Georgia ahead of Auburn because of the one loss. But one of those losses was the number one team in the country in Clemson. I don't think you can discount that. And the fact that the spread and the final tally on the scoreboard at the end of the game, you got to put Auburn ahead of Georgia tonight. I just think, listen, there's going to be a ton to play out. Georgia will get another chance if Auburn's able to win against Alabama. If they don't win against Alabama, it's a moot point. But tonight, in this college football playoff rankings, Auburn ahead of Georgia without a doubt.
I have to agree with you. I can't dispute anything you just said there. One final comment, Jason Lee says that Bama-Auburn game is going to be the must-watch. Boy, it really is. I'm hoping that final Saturday works out so that I'm able to watch that entire game, not covering the Georgia game, because that is going to be a real fun game to watch.
Very, very special matchup when you look at what Kerryon Johnson's going to and Gus Malzahn are going to try to do to that nicked-up Alabama linebacking core. I can tell you right now, as an Alabama guy, that usually when Bama goes into games, they've been favored in almost every game for the last 8 years. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of cause for concern around Bama Nation right now. When you talk to people in Tuscaloosa, not everybody's very confident about that game. First time I think Bama fans have felt that way in a very long time.
That's really interesting. I cannot wait for the Iron Bowl. It is going to be a great one. Let's move on to item number 3 in our AT&T SEC Country Line First and 10 list. We had some coaching rumors involving a big name, Chip Kelly, a moment ago. How about some potential coaching rumors involving another big name in the coaching ranks, a sitting SEC coach, Dan Mullen? Let me start here with Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, who wrote a column this week and essentially encouraging Mullen to move on from Mississippi State. Here is some of what Dennis Dodd had to say. This is your moment, Dan. Take it. What you've done at Mississippi State's been amazing, but it's been long enough. You know that. Well, if Dan Mullen does know that, he wasn't letting on when he spoke to the media earlier this week. Here's a taste of what Mullen had to say in response to all these coaching rumors. Mullen says, as I keep saying, everybody has an opinion of what I should and shouldn't do. People who know me know I'm not interested in other people's opinion. So not really letting on the way he's thinking there, but clearly the tension starts to build for Mullen taking another job. Is this the time that's right for Mullen to kind of jump and go take another position?
It's just such a tough question to answer. Before I even go into that, is there a good answer for coaches to give in these press conferences? I mean, it's like no matter what you say, you're either going to egg it on or you're going to look bad. There's something bad's going to go in these press.
But if you really know you're not taking a job, you can say, I am definitely not leaving no matter what. There's a way to completely close the door on this. Now, as we'll hear later on the show, sometimes when coaches do that, they have a tendency to prove themselves to be liars. So if you can either tell the truth or, sort of coach speak that sort of sounds like a lie, but the best way to kind of get out of this is to completely tell the truth. Hey, I'm going to deal with this at the end of the season. We'll find out. Or I'm definitely not going anywhere no matter what. I mean, there is a way to tell the truth that closes the door on any other outcome.
Well, but here's what you're opening yourself for. I'm going to deal with that at the end of the season. Then all of a sudden the recruits are on the phone going, hey, what do you have to deal with?
That's true.
You've sold me a bill of lies
That's
because
true.
You said we're going to build something in Mississippi State. All of a sudden you say you'll deal with it in the season. So now I have to worry about my future. Am I going to sign there on signing day? So I don't think there's a good answer to give. And I think it is interesting when you look at what Dan Mullen posted that he's not interested in other people's opinion. Well, all right, listen, are you interested in Jimmy Sexton's opinion? Are you interested in John Curry's opinion?
Right.
Are you interested in your wife's opinion? I think there's a lot of different areas to look at when you talk about Dan Mullen. And I mentioned to you yesterday, Dan Mullen got a notch on his belt, in my opinion, over the weekend. I've never thought as highly as other people have about Dan Mullen as a head coach. The consistency's never been there for me. How many times have I talked about this offseason? I need the coaches that are consistent when they're playing South Alabama and when they're playing Florida and Alabama. You know what I mean? I need them there every weekend. Dan Mullen hasn't shown that to me, but he has shown the ability recently to be a very good big game coach and to take over a state where nobody's really ever had the kind of success he has at Mississippi State. So he has gained a lot of traction, in my opinion. Do I think he'd be a good hire for Tennessee? I do. I think he'd be a good X's and O's coach. I think he has to get somebody else in there that can coach the defense and put them at a higher level, but I think he can do that, and I think it would be a good hire for them.
Chad Mass says, do the media types just keep copying and pasting the same articles year after year with Mullen? He's not leaving this year. Guys, he knows he has his best team ever coming in next year. That's what Chad Mass says. Roy Dalude in the comment section kind of agrees. He doesn't think Mullen's going anywhere. Michael Clyburn says, can y'all not hear Mullen doesn't want to leave? He loves it here. He said he came to build a championship team, and that's what he's going to do after the game against Alabama. So that's not what I heard from what Mullen just said there, that he loves it here and he's not leaving no matter what. I mean, I heard a guy that's been rumored for every job in the world. If you think that's coming solely from people outside Mullen's sphere of influence, I think you're kidding yourself. And listen, it's not my job to disrespect any SEC fan base. I would never do that. But Mississippi State's not winning the SEC. It's just too hard. And Mississippi State's also not going to treat Mullen the way that TCU has treated Gary Patterson, a school where it's also hard to win at the highest level, but TCU essentially gave Patterson a lifetime contract, built a statue for him. Mississippi State's not doing that for a coach because they're competitive within the SEC. Mullen knows that he may not ever achieve the highest heights there, but at $4 million a year, he's always a risk to get fired. That's one of the reasons guys like that move on, because the pressure to win exists at Mississippi State, even if the opportunity to win doesn't.
Well, and here's what I'd say. Listen, and I hate to even bring this up because I know it's a topic later in the show, but there's one coach that one time said they have to carry you out in a pine box.
Right.
And we may be going down that road again. Here's what I want to see, though. If you're a Mississippi State fan, come up off the pocketbook. Let's get Dan Mullen the money he deserves that he can get elsewhere. If really he's hearing rumors about Tennessee and he's hearing rumors about Florida and you're hearing rumors about him going here and here and here, then this guy should get $6 million a year, $7 million a year. If he's that good a coach, and I think he is, I think he deserves that money, then let's pay him to the way a top-flight SEC coach should be paid. And if you're Mississippi State, maybe go the Gary Patterson route. I don't know if you have to build a statue, but tell this guy how much he means to your program, and maybe he does stick around for the long run.
I'm just saying that the Big 12 has a lot of schools where they don't fire coaches.
Right.
The SEC fires coaches,
no,
even good ones. Tyler Mann, by the way, says, do people really think Dan Mullen's a home run hire? All this fuss about him being considered at all these different schools because he's the best option available, he asks. I don't think he's the best option. I think Jimbo Fisher is still the best option for now. Well, if you want to talk about Tennessee here for a moment, Jimbo Fisher, I don't believe is taking the Tennessee job. If Fisher goes and takes another job, he's going to a place that has ready-made recruiting resources, and that's not Tennessee. Jimbo Fisher's not taking a job where his first task is to start recruiting guys out of state.
Yeah.
He's just not doing that.
No.
If he leaves Florida State, he's going to a place like Texas A&M where he can recruit in-state kids. Nobody that can pick and choose their job wants to go to a place where they have to recruit out of state.
Well, listen, and if you want to talk about consistency, if I'm having to measure Dan Mullen against Jimbo Fisher right now, have you seen Jimbo Fisher's team this year?
Yeah.
I love Jimbo Fisher. I think he's a great coach, national title. He's got the rings, got a Heisman Trophy. But let's talk about doing more with less. And you're going to have to do that off the bat, whatever one of these jobs you take. You're going to have to do more with a little bit less talent. I'm with you. Right now, if I'm Tennessee, I would prefer Dan Mullen right now because – and I understand what the knock is. He's been at Mississippi State. He won 5 games in the regular season last year. He hasn't had the toughest competition for the last couple of years to get where he is. But he's been consistent enough and been at or near the top of the SEC West for a couple of years now. I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he has earned the right to look into these other jobs and think he'd be successful.
I also think Jimbo Fisher's a better coach than you do. That's a debate probably for a different day. For now, though, let me remind you that my name is Brandon Adams. This is Mike Johnson. This is AT&T SEC Country Live. AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless DirecTV. They will help you stay connected all season long. Speaking of these Tennessee coaching rumors, we'll have Josh Ward on our show a little less than 20 minutes from right now. We'll deal with all those from Knoxville. Josh does the Tennessee podcast for SECCountry.com. He's got some great insight on all of that. For now, let's move on to item number 4 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And when you're the number 1 team in the country and you lose in blowout fashion to Auburn on a big national stage, you're going to get some attention. It's going to be mostly negative attention, including the folks at ESPN, including Stephen A. Smith, the screaming blowhard from the TV show First Take. Well, he wasn't happy with what he saw from Georgia over the weekend. Here's a little snippet of him ripping into the dogs. Is this fair to say? Listen to Stephen A.
Georgia should be ashamed of its damn self. The number 1 team in the nation. Losing ain't no big deal. That happens, especially with kids. To get embarrassed like that? I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself. Nick Chubb, you big time. 27 yards. 27 yards rushing. Sony Michel, 21 yards rushing. I mean, this is arguably the best tandem running back in the nation. And you got a combined 48 yards rushing? That's just embarrassing. Kerryon Jones put on a show. He was balling.
So I put the last part there at the end just so you can see how little he knows about any of this stuff. He talks about Kerryon Jones being balling there at the end. Not Kerryon Johnson, but Kerryon Jones. But believe it or not, there's actually a point that he makes that I do think is a fair one to bring up. You can't get blown out. And Kirby Smart is in his 2nd year, and I think he's doing a great job at Georgia. There's not an ounce of buyer's remorse for me with Kirby Smart at Georgia. I think he's going to build a sensational program there with the Dogs. But that is part of the message you have to understand. It's okay to lose. National champions have lost every year since 2013. The last one to go undefeated was Florida State. You had, the two before that also lost a game. But you can't get blown out. I mean, if you want to be a national contender, you can't get blown out. And for the most part, the game on Saturday against Auburn was a blowout. And so from that standpoint, Stephen A.'s not totally wrong with what he says there.
He might not be totally wrong. And it is a bad look to get blown out, especially for a program on the rise when you are number one in the country. And people have been giving you the benefit of the doubt because of the win on against Notre Dame. And then Notre Dame goes and gets blown out against Miami this weekend. And that win doesn't look as good. And then you turn around and lay an egg against Auburn. I have a problem with Stephen A. Smith saying that any college football team should be embarrassed for the Think about what all the good things that Georgia has done well this year, the rise that they've had under Kirby Smart. They have not only returned to prominence, they've returned to national prominence. They a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about this team might be a lock for the college football playoff. That one of the earliest teams to ever clinch a spot. Stephen A. Smith, to me, I don't want to make this more of a topic about Stephen A. Smith than it is about Georgia, but sometimes it kind of falls out that way, and it's a joke to me that he would say anybody needs to be embarrassed. Listen, you can look at Georgia, put all the chinks in your armor you want to, say they shouldn't have lost by this much, shouldn't have lost by this much. They got caught off guard. They went into Jordan Hare Stadium and got smacked in the mouth, and their guys weren't ready to respond to it. The second half told the tale of that. But by no means should they be embarrassed. They're a very good football team, and it wasn't like it was a blowout at halftime.
But here's what I think that you're actually wrong, and I'm a little bit surprised that you're taking this approach, because I think, if anybody, this firsthand. These Georgia players are embarrassed. It's not for Stephen A. Smith to say they should be.
Exactly.
They are embarrassed.
Yep.
I mean, you played on a team, I don't know if you ever got blown out, but you certainly lost a couple times. I know for a fact y'all were embarrassed about it, and you came back and you got revenge the next year. I mean, one of the things I think the Georgia fans actually feel pretty good about right now is they don't need Stephen A. Smith to tell them, hey, you got to be embarrassed you didn't show up on the national stage. You better believe that the Georgia seniors, the ones who will be honored on Saturday, are themselves saying that in practice right now. And, maybe they use what Stephen A. says as extra motivation, maybe they don't. But, I mean, this is big-time SEC football where there is something at stake when you lose. So I think the Georgia players are probably approaching this, not coaches telling them this, players telling each other, you are embarrassed, you ought to be embarrassed, and they're looking themselves in the mirror because of it. So from that standpoint, I don't think we have to treat these Georgia players with kid gloves over this.
No, listen, I completely agree with you. I think the Georgia players are embarrassed, and it works a lot to your advantage when you are embarrassed. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand. When you go into a game and you get beat in a game that you shouldn't be beat in, you definitely become embarrassed. My problem with it being is that it's kind of like when you have that guy in your friend group that you always pick on, but then somebody else picks on him and you're like, hey, man, that's our friend. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like, hey, you know what? We can say whatever we want to this guy right now, but you're not allowed to come in and say that. That's how players feel about these kind of things. You know what? We're going to look from the inside out. We're going to get a lot better. We're going to get back to practice. We're going to get in the weight room. We're going to watch film. But I don't need you telling me I should feel embarrassed about the performance that I put out there. I tried really, really hard.
Jeffrey Payne in the comment section says nobody's giving Auburn credit for the win. Come on, man. Now, Jeffrey, I don't think that's true. Now, we're talking about Georgia for this particular time. But I think, at least on this show, Auburn's getting a lot of credit for what it did, proving itself to be, I think, a national championship contender, which, by the way, is what I said during the offseason. Not that I'm going to take a victory lap after a win against Georgia. But so there's a lot of credit being given to Georgia here. Also in the comment section, Lee Watson talking about Georgia being exposed again as a team that overhyped every year. No. I mean, what do you say back to the folks who are kind of saying
exposure is not a word. We talked about this yesterday. Exposure is way too heavy of a word. What you can look at it as, and you, as a Georgia fan, I think you should look at this and understand there's still some work to do on the recruiting trail. There's still some holes, offensive line, defensive line, that you need to get the depth established under Kirby Smart. He hasn't had time to do that. He's been there a year and a half right now. He's done a lot of great things, but he has not had time to get that depth and the overall talent level up in the trenches to where. So if you want to call that exposure, call it that. But I think right now what you have is a football team that needs to get back to the drawing board for the next couple of weeks and find their way back into Atlanta.
All right, item number 5 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. A common occurrence every single week around the SEC is various SEC players called out to speak to the media, and the gaggle forms around them and questions are asked. And generally, it's pretty boring. Generally, there's not a whole lot to see. But with Will Clapp, the outstanding offensive lineman for LSU, when he met with the media this week, things took a little different turn towards the unexpected. Take a look at what happens to Clapp here, who shows off a little skills in addition to his wordsmithing with the reporters. Take a look at this.
Coach says that you're likely have an injury almost every week, but you will play no matter what. You will not miss time. Is that just it's in your genes? It comes from your dad, your toughness, and where'd it come from?
It's a little bit of exaggeration. I mean, everybody gets banged up. I think every offensive lineman's gonna.
I feel like that's sort of low-key amazing, man. First of all, what is it he catches? Is that is it a marshmallow?
Who threw it at him?
That's another player.
I don't. They're just so random.
But they're walking around. He just had it. And he tossed it.
Yeah,
you think we can do this? Let me try. Oh my gosh! I did it.
Oh, bad throw. Let me get one.
Do it again. I'll try it again.
I'm gonna get hit in the face. I'm not doing it anymore.
One more time. What he did was kind of amazing.
I know y'all saw that.
I should have stopped after the first one. I should have stopped after the first one.
Bad.
But what he did is kind of amazing.
Listen,
these M&Ms are great.
I was gonna say, who walks in to see your buddy in a press conference and they're like, "Hey man, I'm just gonna throw this M&M." Didn't even say anything, just threw an M&M at him.
The way he does it so casual.
Is it an M&M or like a marshmallow?
We did M&Ms, but he did a marshmallow. I don't have any marshmallows.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't have like SNL's.
No, I'm just asking what he did. Like, if
let's see this again.
Somebody threw an M&M out of my head.
Watch how casual this is. I mean, that guy, what's he done this 1,000 times in his life?
I don't know.
That's the greatest.
Yeah.
That's job
impressive.
of.
They've been working on that in the locker room. I don't know.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
Twice. I got 2 of them.
You
didn't come close.
Threw one to yourself, though. You
didn't come close.
I did catch one.
You did not. Did he catch one?
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much.
I'm being told that Mike did catch one. The official
This just in.
Gave you credit for that.
This just in.
That's a pretty good job of Will Clapp.
No, I mean,
he's also a really good offensive lineman.
He's a more than good offensive lineman. He's an All-American caliber offensive lineman. He really, to me, has been one of the biggest deals for this LSU football team, and really, coming back to prominence. I just think it's incredible that somebody threw something. I'm more impressed that somebody threw something at him than I am that he caught it.
I love the fact that I'm over here trying to catch M&Ms in my mouth, and Mike's breaking down Will Clapp's
No, that's right. Listen, hey, man. Listen, don't get me started on offensive linemen. I'll talk all day about the big fellas.
I'll
talk all day about the big fellas.
All right, well, let's move on to item number 6 in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. You may not like talking about this too much, but people are talking about Alabama. Close call against Mississippi State. Maybe some folks talking up Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Take a look at what Jason McIntyre, who's the founder of the blog site known as The Big Lead, what he wrote about Alabama over the weekend. Injuries are significant. Schedule so far has been very soft. Alabama isn't nearly as strong at stopping the run this year. There are legitimate problems. I'd go so far as to call this Nick Saban's worst team since 2010. You agree with that?
I'm not going to give you the answer you probably think I'm going to give you. Well, first of all, I said this earlier in the year that after all these injuries start mounting up, that I think that if Nick Saban is able to get this team to the college football playoff, it's one of the most impressive coaching jobs he has ever had at Alabama. And here's what the kickback that I'll give you on Jason McIntyre. How many times have we brought this quote up?
Yeah.
You are what your record says you are. They didn't lose to a team like South Carolina this year. All they have left on their schedule right now is Auburn. So I can't say that they're as bad. By the way, that 2010 team might have been the most talented team that Nick Saban's had at Alabama. When you talk about, Trent Burson, Mark Ingram were there, Marcel Darius, Julio Jones, the list goes on. Barrett Jones, James Carpenter was their first-round pick, Dante Hightower. The list is crazy. I tend to not really come down on Jason McIntyre for this, though, because I do see an Alabama team that has holes in it, which is not what Alabama fans are used to. Yeah. This team does have holes, and they do have problems at times stopping the run. They do have problems in the passing game. So from that angle, by the way, you can be the worst team that Nick Saban's had at Alabama and still be a national championship caliber football team. It's not a knock on them so much as it is to say what Nick Saban's done at Alabama.
Isaac Berry says this article's a freaking joke. The truth is, and you kind of just alluded to this, it sort of sounds like more of a hot take than it really is to say, this is the worst team than a team that was 1 year removed from having won the national championship. Yes. I mean, that's not the world's biggest insult. There are a lot of teams who would love to be as good as Alabama was in 2010, so it's not the biggest insult. But what it is a situation in which Alabama is not invulnerable this year the way that it has been in years past. Now, that doesn't mean Alabama will lose. Most college football teams are imperfect, and some college football team wins every single game, and the teams that win usually have some degree of imperfection. I do think this is a new thing for Alabama fans to deal with. They're not used to being an imperfect team. They're close to used to being pretty close to dominant on both sides of the ball. But with the injuries to the linebackers, y'all know that in a big game, I don't completely trust Jalen Hurts. I mean, there is some areas in which Alabama is not as perfect right now as some of the Alabama teams have been in the past, and I don't think it's that big of a hot take to say that.
I don't think it's big of a hot take either. And I'll also say this. I think the SEC is as bad right now as it's probably been since 2010. When you look at a lot of the teams around the SEC that you think usually might have knocked off a team like Alabama with holes in it so far, haven't been able to do it. And I think when you look at this team, you have to be objective and notice the fact that there are injuries. You're having trouble overcoming some of the losses you had from last year's defense. It's not as dominant as a defense as you've seen. It's not as dominant of a running game as you've seen in Alabama in the past. And it's like you said, it's kind of a loaded statement to say this is the worst since 2010 when every team since 2010 has only had 1 or 0 regular season losses. There's been some really, really good football teams at Alabama since 2010. Do I think this team has a chance to go beat Auburn and make it to Atlanta? Absolutely. I think they're a very good team. They can. Nick Saban, every Alabama fan trusts him to put a game plan together to face Gus Malzahn and to come out on the winning side of that. Am I as confident as I've ever been in an Iron Bowl victory? No. And I think that kind of tells you the story right now why this article has been written.
Corey Andrews says too many injuries to overcome against good teams. Jeremy Rogers says the opposite. Alabama's able to lose half its team and they could still compete. But the problem, Jeremy, is at one position group, Alabama has lost about half its team. The linebacker spot, you've
probably more than that. Honestly.
Yeah, honestly, more than half. You've subtracted a lot of people, and Alabama's depth is unquestioned. Y'all know I follow the recruiting stuff. About 3/4 of that roster is a former 4 or 5-star player coming out of high school. When you start taking a bunch of names away from one position group, the way that it has at linebacker, that is going to be impacted. And against a team like Auburn that wants to spread you out wide so we can run up the middle, the absence of those linebackers is going to be felt.
Well, I think what he's saying, too, when you say they can lose half their team and still compete, it's absolutely true because they still are competing. That's not what anybody's trying to say. You're not trying to say that Alabama can't still compete for a national title because they absolutely can. What you're asking is putting them against. It's weird because I think Alabama fans, for a lot of times under Nick Saban, have a hard time with. Listen, you can put Alabama against anybody else, and Alabama fans are going to say, you know what, Alabama's going to win, and a lot of times they're right. But what Alabama fans have trouble with sometimes, and a lot of people on the national media scene, putting current Alabama teams against past Alabama teams. That's where you start to get the hiccups in, and some people can't really look at this year's team and say they're not as good as they have been in years past. But for me, it's true, and I think that's a tough undertaking for a lot of people to look at.
My name is Brandon Adams. That's Mike Johnson. This is AT&T's SEC Country Live. AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. I'm still amazed I caught some of those M&Ms.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed you didn't see me catch one.
I'm too busy catching my own.
Man. I can't even get
I'm
credit
over here winning a Gold Glove.
I'm over here working my butt off trying to talk about Will Clapp being a good lineman.
Breaking down the offensive line film. We're over here having fun. Nonetheless, in a couple minutes, we're bringing Josh Ward. Speaking of having fun, he covers the Tennessee Vols on our SEC Country Tennessee podcast every day for SECCountry.com. We'll talk to him about some of those Tennessee coaching rumors in a moment. Before that, though, I want to get to item number 7. Speaking of Will Clapp's team, LSU. Can we have a very serious conversation here for a moment? This is no fun and games. This is no joke. I need to give a start warning to LSU.
We're not very good at serious conversations.
No, this is serious. In fact, I need to make sure I get LSU's attention. I think I got some folks. Yeah, we need to get the LSU's attention. Sirens blaring. Everybody hear me on this. If you're an LSU fan, you got to be very, very
siren
careful.
And everything.
Oh yeah, we can listen. This is how we roll around here.
We have an emergency in the building.
We have a cast of thousands that helps us get this show on the air every single day. Be very careful on Saturday. Be very careful against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Brady Hoke, interim coach. I have no idea who's going to be at quarterback. I have no idea what's going down this weekend for the Vols. I'm assuming that LSU should win this game. Be very careful.
Listen.
Be very careful.
Here's when I first saw this topic, I was like, you know what, he's right. Anytime you get a coach fired, especially at a place like Tennessee, because I've been there, I've had my coach fired. It made us want to tear through everything in sight. I mean, we practiced hard, we did everything. Here's what kind of is skewing me off right now. I thought the same thing about Florida because they're still a very talented football team, and they had Randy Shannon, a guy who's been a head coach. I'm thinking, man, Missouri should really watch out when they play Florida. Even though Missouri is favored by 3, Florida should go up there and tear Missouri a new one. They fell flat on their face. Got beat by 30 points. I don't know that Tennessee has it in them to really make this a great fight. I think the fact that you have to look at it and say LSU isn't a great football team right now probably gives Tennessee the ability to really mount some type of comeback. But Missouri ran for 430 yards on Tennessee last week. If you're telling me Darius Geis ain't going to get 250 this weekend, then I don't know what we're watching.
Shannon Burgess, who's a great LSU fan in the comments section, says, BA, you need to calm down, brah. And Cliff Nelson, another big LSU fan, kind of saying a very similar thing. Listen.
He said he'd spot you 17 points, BA.
No. That's not a bet. I'm not picking Tennessee to win. And for me, this entire topic is not really about Tennessee. And I am not in any way trying to be disrespectful. Y'all got to hear me out on this. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. My issue is not what I think Tennessee's going to do, because my guess is they're probably not going to rise up and play for a Brady Hoke either. That's my guess. Just don't kill the messenger. I don't completely trust LSU. And it's like the whole loss to Troy thing is so far in the rearview mirror now. It's actually turned out to be an okay season. LSU fans are feeling pretty good about Ed Orgeron right now.
Yeah.
You're kind of rolling into a recruiting year. Orgeron's going to stockpile talent. Like, everything's actually going okay for LSU at the moment. This is a spot where I think you got to be careful. I think you got to be careful.
It's hard to argue with. I'll answer to you with this. I'll say, listen, if LSU goes into Knoxville at Neyland Stadium this weekend and this game was within 10 points, then Ed Orgeron needs to go right back on the hot seat. I mean, right back on the hot seat.
But that's why I think you got to be careful, because this is a guy that, is sort of teetering on the brink. I mean, remember, I don't want to bring up a whole deal here, but he told us at one point in time that he was going to play Miles Brennan, then he started playing him again, and now he said Danny Hilling's our quarterback. I mean, this is a guy who sort of contradicted himself on what I believe is the most important issue on the team, and that's his quarterback situation. Are we sure about Ed Orgeron here?
I'm not sure about Ed Orgeron, but I feel pretty sure about Matt Canada right now. The fact that when you look at Tennessee's defense, not good. I don't even have the numbers in front of me right now, but I think Missouri had 650 yards of offense this past weekend against Tennessee. Tennessee's D-line couldn't get on blocks, their linebackers couldn't make tackles, and their secondary couldn't cover anybody. So if you're telling me that Matt Canada is not going to be able to go down and take Darius Guice and Danny Etling and the rest of this offense and put something together, DJ Chark, put something together that separates you from Tennessee, then I'm just telling you right now, they need to all be back on the hot seat. I don't see it happening.
Tyler Mann says, I'm going to be in Knoxville wearing the LSU gear proudly. Tyler, hope you enjoy that time there in Knoxville. Go to Calhoun's, I guess, after the game. Maybe have a little fun. What do you think the Tennessee crowd's going to be like on Saturday?
I hope it's good. I would think that the empty Neyland campaign is probably over with. I think that we can welcome all the VFLs back into the stadium, and I think they're excited about a new chapter. Everybody I've talked to that's a Tennessee fan, and you guys can answer me in the comment section as well, very excited about getting a new chapter started at Tennessee, moving on from the Butchisms. You don't have to hear all the stuff that Butch is saying for the last few years. All you have to do is worry about going in and trying to knock off a good LSU team. I think they're excited.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll get Josh Ward here coming up in just a moment. For now, let's move on to item number 8 on our AT&T SEC Country Life First and 10 list. More of these coaching rumors continuing. This time, another coach sort of having to force to talk about these things. That's Louisville coach Bobby Petrino. We have a quote here from the Louisville Courier-Journal about what Petrino has said. It's very similar to the same kind of denials. He says, I've just got to focus on what I can do. He was talking to Andy Wagner, who's the director of football operations. He was asking me something earlier today. I said, I don't even know about that. I don't get up in the morning, turn on talk radio. I just come here. Our focus is here. So Petrino also kind of sidestepping some of these allegations.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Petrino is a proven liar. You can't believe a thing that he says about anything.
Yeah.
So my question more for you is, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, is Petrino a guy that you can bring back to the SEC?
I think you can, and I think they'd be well served to do it. I think he's a guy that's proven that he can win when he has talent on the field. And I think he can recruit at a higher level at Tennessee than he has at any of his other stops. I think what you'd be worried about if you're a Tennessee fan are obviously the character issues. And I think that the way he left the Atlanta Falcons in the middle of the night, the way that he obviously had to depart Arkansas because of the issues, but he has built himself back, and maybe he's learned some lessons. I think it'd be a great hire for Tennessee. I think he's a guy that can automatically come in and have a better offensive play design. If nothing else, you don't have to see the running back handing off to the left and the offensive line going left and getting tackled for loss. I think he'd be a guy to kind of resurrect that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're seeing some stuff. Can I just break in a little bit of breaking news here?
Sure.
This is not breaking news. This is just, I guess, more rumoring. I'll get back to the Bob Petrino thing here in a moment. But SEC Country Florida, the page here on Chip Kelly. Let me update a story. Trey Wallace, who is a guy we've cited here on our program a lot from the Read Optional, I believe it's the name of the website. He works with Ollie Connolly. They've broken a lot of stories. They certainly have had a lot of interesting reports here as of late. What Trey Wallace has tweeted out here just a little earlier today is that Gator reps are heading to talk with Chip Kelly. Things are picking up on the SEC coaching searches. So that's at SECCountry.com right now. Trey Wallace tweeting that out himself, that Gator reps are heading to Bristol, Connecticut, where Kelly is living right now because of his work that he's doing with ESPN. So this is the kind of thing that can be tracked. I mean, you see a plane leave from Gainesville to go to Bristol. I mean, that kind of stuff is, college football fans have been doing that for a while now. So, I mean, I have to admit, if this is really going down and much the same way that plane flight left from Gainesville to Fort Collins, Colorado a couple years ago, talked to Jim McElwain. If it's heading up to Bristol to talk to Chip Kelly right now, this is not where I thought this was going. As recently as yesterday in my own show today, I talked about this all being subterfuge for Florida to get the guy that it really wants. maybe Chip Kelly is the guy that Florida really wants.
I think that this is open to a possibility because this is not a guy that has a coaching job right now. I think when you have teams and ADs that kind of beat around the bush and they say, we're going to do this or that, and they end up doing something else. I think that's because that guy is employed somewhere else, and they have to kind of do that. And they have to kind of go through these underground tunnels to get the guy they want. This guy's in Bristol, Connecticut. Like you mentioned, he's working for ESPN right now. He is open to a coaching job. I think that if he is even thinking about coaching right now, he is ready to get in the seat and start driving the car towards recruiting in National Signing Day, that early National Signing Day. And I didn't think that I would be this excited for Florida fans, but I'm just telling you right now, I think it's a great hire. I think automatically that Florida right now has an automatic top 4 head coach in the SEC. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Do you think this puts more pressure on Tennessee to now make its own home run hire? I don't know that the home run name is out there, but I mean, clearly business is picking up right now in the SEC East, to quote Jim Ross, the wrestling announcer. Georgia's been ranked number 1 this year. Kirby Smart looks like to be a pretty good hire for Georgia there. They're going to win the East this season. If Florida and these reports of them going up to Bristol to talk to Chip Kelly, they play out, that's a guy that was in a national championship game. All of a sudden the balance, all the big name coaches for a while in the SEC West, some of that balance shifting back towards the East. I mean, that half of the league certainly gets a lot more interesting.
I can tell you right now, if Tennessee is able to go out and get the head coach they want, be it Petrino, be it Chris Peterson, be it Mike Leach, be it Dan Mullen, any one of those 4, and Chip Kelly's at Florida and Kirby Smart's at Georgia, I mean, get your popcorn ready for the SEC East. That is what the SEC East has been trying to get back to for 10 years now. I mean, that's been the SEC East that I grew up on. Watching those guys, I think seeing those 3 teams and those 3 coaches compete for the next few years to come would be a great situation for the SEC as a whole.
Oh, by the way, also in the Christopher White mentioning, other rumors that are out there about the idea of Jimbo Fisher getting more serious with Texas A&M, who hasn't officially moved on from Kevin Sumlin yet. Most of us think that's a foregone conclusion that A&M could also kind of throw its hat in the ring for the kind of like the big name there as well. I think that the timing is right for Fisher to leave Florida State, and I do mean this. I think he's a better coach than you do.
Probably so.
I think that I just think that you're flat wrong with your evaluation of Fisher. But that aside, he is a big name because he's won a national championship. And A&M, if it makes a move, they want some pizzazz. They want to keep pace with that state of Texas. I think A&M is going to be heard from on this sort of like arms race coaching search situation.
I don't think there's any doubt that Jimbo is definitely going to listen to Texas A&M. When you look at the way Jimbo has talked about the boosters, about the administration at Florida State, about the money he's been given, about the facilities, he wants to go somewhere where he is being backed financially. He doesn't really have that many ties to Florida State. It's obviously won a national title there, and he's going to be remembered as a coach that won a national title after Bobby Bowden. But go somewhere like Texas A&M that really is just waiting to really hit that next level of recruiting, college football, the SEC, the whole bit. I think he'd be a great fit there.
SMP Corp on Facebook comment says, breaking news, Brett Bielema going to Florida. Not to coach, just to retire. Scott Murphy says, for Bobby Petrino, it'd just be a short ride on a motorcycle from Louisville down to Knoxville. I mean, maybe that's the case there as well.
I'm telling you, I think it would be a home run hire for them. I really do. I know that the Tennessee fans are going to say, you know what, we hold our coaches to a higher standard than that, but right now you want to win. And you've got to kind of swallow a little bit of pride, and I think Bobby Petrino is the right guy in the situation.
Let me go to Josh Ward here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And Josh, we obviously want to talk to you a lot about the Tennessee coaching search, but if you don't mind, let me let you piggyback on the conversation we were just having. New reports coming out here in the last hour that Florida is apparently heading up to Bristol, Connecticut to meet with Chip Kelly. I can't confirm those reports, but it's all over the internet. That's what Florida's doing, and it's certainly in line with some of the other rumors we've also been hearing here. As a guy in Knoxville, Tennessee, kind of a capital city in the SEC East, what would be the reaction of Vols fans if Florida makes a big coaching hire like Kelly before Tennessee kind of gets off the mat with its own hire?
I don't think it would be positive among Tennessee fans. It would be right in line probably with how they felt over the last few months. A lot of Tennessee fans would be asking the question, hey, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we go get Chip Kelly? Now, I would also say I think Florida's a better job, and if you're going head-to-head against Florida, good luck if you're Tennessee. In most cases, it depends on what the connection is, where the coach is from, all that. But in this case, I would say Florida is probably a better fit, and Florida would have the advantage. But Tennessee fans would feel like they're falling behind instead of moving forward, even while Tennessee is conducting its own search and looking for its own coach to take over and begin a new era in Knoxville. But Tennessee fans, I think a lot of fans are excited that a move has been made to move on from Butch Jones, but many are still nervous about what will happen next.
And we obviously hear a lot about the Jon Gruden stuff. It's become kind of an internet joke. It's been around for so many years. But they're in Knoxville, the people that you talk to every day on your SEC Country podcast, on your radio show in Knoxville. I mean, is Gruden the people's choice to get the Tennessee job? Is there another name that Vols fans really want? I mean, what do Tennessee fans say about who the next coach should be?
A lot of Tennessee fans want Jon Gruden and have wanted Jon Gruden for a long time. And this goes back to 2012. Before that even, Jon Gruden's name would pop up. But in 2012, there was a lot of discussion about Jon Gruden. And I didn't think at the time that he was going to be Tennessee's coach. Obviously, he did not become the coach. It was Butch Jones that ended up replacing Derek Dooley. And it's happened again, where the groomers are out there and there's a lot of speculation and anticipation. You hear all different kinds of stories. And over the last few weeks, there have been some that have been pretty good. You've had the rumors of Jon Gruden putting together an all VFL staff, so all former players. I would think that he would at least hire one coach that he's familiar with working with if he were to get back into it. And there have been talks of him reaching out to coaches, maybe not necessarily with Tennessee, but just in general, of saying, hey, if I get back into coaching, would you want to join me? I think Jon Gruden has done that a lot. We've heard him. You can hear him in the booth talk about sometimes how he misses coaching, which will really fire Tennessee fans up. And fans check on the color of his tie every Monday night to see if that indicates anything. I think it's a real long shot. And now you're starting to see speculation. Could Jon Gruden jump back into the NFL and maybe even back to Tampa, where he had success and won a Super Bowl? So Tennessee fans want him. Not all fans, but most. And I don't know who the number two. I don't know if there's a clear-cut number two that fans would want. Maybe it's Chip Kelly, but you don't hear much about that. You hear about Dan Mullen at Mississippi State, but I think you're going to have a lot of split fans if they find out it's not Jon Gruden.
Josh, let me ask you this, because this is a topic we've had on the show, obviously, all year. We switched back and forth. All offseason, when we talk about Jarrett Guarantano and Quentin Dormady, now all of a sudden Will McBride enters the conversation. I know a lot of this depends on who the head coach is at Tennessee next year, but who's going to be taking snaps under center for Tennessee next year? Is one of these guys going to transfer? Are we going to see all three of these guys return to Tennessee? Is this something we can kind of forecast as to who's going to be the quarterback next year?
Yeah, I think the offense really matters because you are looking at somewhat different skill set. If I were handicapping it right now, then I would say Jarrett Guarantano is the best guess. The talented redshirt freshman who's gotten a little bit of an opportunity, I think has improved over the course of the season. Early on in the year, I didn't think that Guarantano was really ready to go out there and play. He went in the Indiana State game week 2 for Tennessee and struggled. Played against UMass, struggled. Played against Georgia. Everybody for Tennessee struggled that week. But after that, started to improve. And actually, the last time we saw Guarantano, opening drive against Southern Miss, lesser opponent, not the SEC, I know, but he led a drive down the field, completed a long pass down the field to Marquez Callaway. And earlier in the season, I don't think Tennessee had much confidence in him being able to move the ball down the field with his arm. I think that was starting to grow, and then he got hurt. With him being younger, talented, I think Guarantano would be probably more the favorite ahead of Quentin Dormady, and that's assuming Dormady stays. He has 1 year of eligibility left. He has something to decide in the next few weeks of what he wants to do. Had shoulder surgery a few weeks ago. And then Tennessee has 2 talented players that are committed. Adrian Martinez, who is from Fresno, California, 4-star high school All-American, then Michael Penix from down in Tampa. They could have something to say. Martinez is very well thought of, but they're also waiting to find out who the coach is. So I couldn't call one of them the favorite because it's not guaranteed they'll be in Knoxville. That's why I would say that Guarantano is the guy to watch right now. And Will McBride, I think, impressed the other day against Missouri. I think fans like him, his teammates like him, but I don't think he's the guy that's at least at the top of the chart in the plans for Tennessee at quarterback.
Josh, always great to have you here on AT&T SEC Country Live. We'll look forward to more from you on the SEC Country Tennessee podcast, and of course, talk to you in the program again here very soon as well.
Hey, you got it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Great stuff there from Josh Ward there in Knoxville, Tennessee. Really interesting insight into how much some Tennessee fans want Jon Gruden. One more thing to bring up about what he was saying, Adrian Martinez, the 4-star quarterback from Fresno, is a Tennessee commit. He also took a visit to Ohio State this weekend. So it's not a guarantee. Right. Tennessee's already lost Cade Mays, already lost Delonte Taylor, already lost a lot of big-name recruits in the 2018 class. And there's a lot of thought out there that with Emory Jones about to decommit from Ohio State, that Martinez could go to go there and take his place. And the next Tennessee coach may not have that really good quarterback from California that obviously Vols fans would like to be a part of that program.
I think there's a ton of stuff to look at recruiting-wise about what you're going to have at quarterback in the SEC. This was supposed to be the year of the quarterback. And listen, I think that it's not only quarterbacks that are going to head to these places in recruiting, but look at what's going on at Ole Miss right now. Ta'amu, the guy that comes in for Shea Patterson, absolutely lit up the scoreboard. Is Matt Corral a guy that would play under Chip Kelly in that system? Do you switch Kadarius Toney back to quarterback if you're at Florida for next year? There's a lot of questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all pans out.
We're going to rock and roll here a little bit. Let me move on to item number 9 on our AT&T SEC Country Line First and 10 list. I thought that Mark Schlabach, ESPN.com, had an interesting assessment of Georgia, and that's not just the dogs that he's picking on here, but he was looking at all the college football playoff contenders and what the fatal flaw for each of these teams could be, and it just so happens that timeliness is kind of an essence here when it comes to Schlabach's assessment of Georgia. Here is what he wrote about a potential flaw that could keep Georgia out of the playoff conversation at the end of the season. Given Georgia's production on the ground before Auburn, Bulldogs hadn't asked much from Jake Fromm, but get this stat. Coming into the week, Georgia was just 40% of its yards coming via the pass, 12th lowest in FBS. He goes on to say, this is Mark Schlabach writing for ESPN.com, according to ESPN Stats and Info, it's not a good sign. No team has won a national championship with that little of its yardage coming on passes since Nebraska in 1997, which had just 24% coming via the pass. I'm a Fromm defender. I think that Fromm's had a much better season than most of the national media realizes. I got to tell you, though, that stat does cause me to raise an eyebrow. Right. If you're a Georgia fan, Mike, you hear what Schlabach says there. How afraid should that make you of Georgia's chances of winning the SEC championship? Getting in the college football playoff, doing more than that, knowing that it's sort of bucking a recent historical trend if it were to do so.
Well, I think the way you have to look at it right now, if you're a Georgia fan and you lost Auburn this past weekend, is I'm glad if I'm a Georgia fan that we got that out of the way. And we understand what it's going to take to be successful in the passing game. Because one of the things that I think bothered me about the way that Alabama lost against Clemson last year is I don't think they were challenged in a way that Jalen Hurts had to throw the ball throughout the season. And I think in the end, when you got to game number 15 and he all of a sudden had to do it, I think it bit him back. I don't think it was, hey, Jalen can't throw the ball. I think it was he wasn't forced to at all. And now that I think that you've been through those circumstances with Jake Fromm, I think it's a good thing that it's out of the way. I think that you can go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, this didn't work. We've got to play better in this way. Jake Fromm's got to be better here. But it's not just Jake Fromm. It's obviously the entire passing game, the wide receiver core, the offensive line giving him protection. But I'm feeling good right now if I'm Georgia that we've already gone through that. And now we can move on from that and try to see if we can develop the downfield passing game in a way that we haven't needed to before during the season.
Mark Schlabach kind of sounding alarm on Jake Fromm, but for what it's worth, Kirby Smart apparently not all that concerned, even coming off the bad loss to Auburn. Kirby still likes some of the things that he saw from Fromm. Here's what he said after the game.
I thought he made some good decisions. Jake's a battler. If he showed anything tonight, he can move in the pocket, step up, move around when the pass rush is there. They got some good rushers, guys. That front is a really good front. They got a really good front, and we showed the ability at the end to still be able to move the ball and throw it when they had the good rushers still in. But at the end of the day, I thought Jake played well. He played hard. He made good decisions.
So here's why I'm not all that concerned about what Schlabach has to say there. A, I agree with Kirby Smart. Even in the midst of the game on Saturday, Fromm was more good than bad, even though some Georgia fans were a little disappointed by the final result. I thought Fromm was way more good than bad on Saturday. But while Schlabach rightly kind of points out the ratio of pass to rush that most national champions have had, the one thing that stat doesn't include is an Alabama team that came close to winning the national championship in 2016 that had a high degree of its offense coming via the rush, and an Alabama team in 2014 that came close to winning the national championship that also had a high degree of its offense coming via the rush. I mean, Alabama teams have shown you coming close here the last couple of years that running teams can still be in the college football playoff conversation, even if those two Alabama teams just came up just a bit short.
Well, 2014 is a little bit different because they did pass the ball a lot in 2014. I think they averaged like 280 passing yards a game with Blake Sims at the helm. But if you do want to go back to last year, I think it's a good point to bring up when you look at last year and the fact that they did get the college football playoff not doing it. And I would make the argument that the reason they didn't win the national title last year is because of that passing game. And so I think
a fair point.
I think it's a valid point to look at. You do look at the dynamics. I don't know what the percentages were as far as Alabama goes last year, but the problem they didn't get over the hump because of the passing game. And so I do think I don't think it's time to sound the alarm bells. I don't think it's saying, man, Georgia's season's over because they haven't 40% of their offense isn't passing yards. I do think it's something they need to work on. And listen, I'm with you. I think Jake Fromm did a good job at times getting the ball to Wims, getting the ball to Hardman, allowing those guys to make plays in space with their speed, getting up the field, having good blocks. I don't know if we've seen a lot of over-the-top passing, or at least not even the threat of it. And so I think that once they start to implement that into this offense and Jim Chady gets that going, at least having the threat of maybe beating that man coverage over the top and have the safety come over and help, I think that'll open things up a little bit.
Jonathan Allen's a Georgia fan. He says Georgia's not balanced at all. It's completely the fault of the offensive coordinator, Jim Chaney, which is a refrain you're hearing from some Dog fans coming off this game against Auburn. By the way, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Let's move on to item number 10 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. You asked early in the show, why don't coaches just come clean and tell the truth about what they're doing? Because maybe sometimes...
I don't know if that's how I framed it, but yeah, I don't know if there's a good way to do it. But.
Maybe this is an example of why you don't. Because years ago, when Tommy Tuberville was still the coach at Ole Miss, and the rumors were out there that he was going to take the Auburn job, he said the only way he was leaving Oxford, Mississippi was in a pine box, obviously referencing his own death. Well, eventually, Tuberville did indeed take the Auburn job, but he comes back to Oxford this week as broadcast for ESPN. And the official Twitter account for Ole Miss had some fun with that fact this week. You see the picture of Mike Patrick and Tommy Tuberville there. Ole Miss tweets out the ESPN crew for Saturday. Word is they're traveling into Oxford via a pine box. Now, we've sort of had some criticism of the Ole Miss Twitter account before. This is an example to me of Ole Miss getting exactly right.
Yes.
I think this is a well-placed joke and a pretty good job by the Rebels there.
Yeah, I think so too. And literally, I think one of the funny angles to look at this at is I don't know that head coaches are what they were 20 years ago right now. I think that there's so much more is expected of head coaches because when you look at what Tommy Tuberville was at Ole Miss, wasn't that great? When you look at what he was at Auburn, like his first 5 years, wasn't that great? And I think it's so funny that you do say the thing about, what a bad quote to come out and say something about a pine box and 3 days later being shipped out of there.
Especially for like another SEC job.
Right,
it's like
in the same division.
It's like an hour down the road or something like that.
I know Nick Saban catches a lot of flack for saying I won't be the Alabama head coach, but he's with the Dolphins and he's going to the SEC. This is an interdivision rival, and you just skip town.
Butch Jones is gone, but we still have Champions of Life here on AT&T SEC Country Live. We'll do one of those coming up in just a moment to close out our show. Before that, though, let's do our AT&T look ahead here, and this is actually a pretty important one tonight. College football playoff rankings do come out again this evening. If you want to find out how much Auburn moves up, how far Georgia moves down, does Alabama take over the top spot at number 1? That'll all be there for you tonight. But it's not released until 9 p.m. tonight because of some college basketball there on ESPN. So a little later tonight for the college football playoff. By the way, I will tell you that Mike and I will be back here on the SEC Country Facebook page for the Academy Sports and Outdoors Path to Playoff show. We'll break all this down with you. We had a good time on that last week.
Yeah, I think so. And listen, we're guessing. We're watching it right along with everybody else. So there's no analysis that's going to take place. We're going to get on there and talk about what...
I'll still pop off.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get on there and talk about what we're seeing, but we don't know before y'all do. So we're kind of catching it all at the same time.
Yeah, so it'll be fun tonight, 9 p.m., by the way, and that is our AT&T look ahead. All right. So we close out the show the same way every day. A lot of you ask, Butch Jones is gone. Are you still doing Champions of Life? And we said absolutely. That's a big part of our show here. Even if there's no more Butch Jones, this will be our way of just kind of remembering his great legacy there at Knoxville. Well, today, it comes from the ranks of the Division III college football world. You may think, what could be impressive down in Division III football? The kind of play you don't see a lot, and the reaction to a score, you definitely don't see very much. Let's see if the big guy, Mike Johnson, is impressed with this and could actually do this himself. Take a look.
Season opening Adrian Invitational. He went 3-1 for that day. Congratulations.
First and 10, Heidelberg. Stoyle rolling to his right. He's going to throw a backside, and it's going to be a little.
Yes.
They did a little hook and ladder.
So how about the hook and ladder?
So they went ahead and threw it out here to McGee, and they had Brock Riggs on the backside. They flip it to him, and he rolls in for the score.
The place is going crazy.
That is one for the books right there, folks.
That is
First of all, I love the monotone play-by-play. The place is going crazy. That is one for the books. One of the greatest plays in this program's history. I love the fact that there is no emotion about that. An offensive lineman took the hook and ladder lateral and did a flip in the end zone, and these guys can't give me a little voice.
I'm just telling you, if I was in the booth, I'm going bananas bananas at that point when the big fella does. Not only does he get the touchdown, but the somersault into the end zone.
Could you do that? You ever been able to do a somersault?
Nah, not like that. Well, listen, I'd probably break my tailbone, but I'd try. I definitely try.
What does the scouts call that? A dancing bear? Can you get the feet going there?
I don't know.
Listen, that's what they call it, right?
I scored a touchdown in my career, but I didn't get the chance to run it.
You scored a touchdown?
I scored a touchdown with the Falcons.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Can we get some video of that?
I'll have to do a champion of life at that one.
Would you dive on the ball or something?
No, man. Passing touchdown.
No way.
Yeah.
Did y'all know this?
Yeah, we'll have to
Did you know this?
We'll have to get that queued up one day for sure for the champion of life.
Oh my gosh, we got to find that. That's all. I
didn't get to somersault into the end zone. That's why I'm jealous of this guy, man.
Well, listen, I'm jealous of you. All right, we'll be back again tomorrow. In between now and then, if you want to hear the podcast, go to iTunes. You can subscribe, give us a rating and review there. Also, share this show with your friends on Facebook. Let them know we're talking about AT&T. We're talking about the SEC each and every day here on AT&T SEC Country Live. By the way, also coming up, we got a big announcement to make. Mike and I are going to be out in public. You're going to have a chance to see us real soon. I'm really, really excited about telling you all about that. We'll tell you more tomorrow, though. For now, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on AT&T SEC Country Live.